Hello everyone, and welcome to the HGC post show number 2 for 2018. For those of you who are not familiar with the format, I start out by going over what happened this week in the HGC scene. And then, oh, Sad Hots, thank you for the sub. 8 months in a row. Nice, I think that's my first 8-month resum. Welcome back to the guest list. I recommend a series that was fun to watch and maybe educational in some ways from each region. Just one per region for those of you who can't watch every single match. Vincent Vladimir, thank you for the sub. Welcome to the guest list. Appreciate it a lot. It says I have like 3 viewers right now, but I just got 2 subs. That feels really strange to me. I don't know. So looking at Korea, you know, it'd be a cool Master League feature. I just thought about this. I'm a little slow sometimes. A cool Master League feature would be if you could click on just a week and only have the matches from that week. It would probably not be that useful to anyone but me and other people who do, you know, content, but it would actually be really cool. Unfortunately, Master League is for sale right now, so adding new features is probably not high on the list, since the reason it's for sale is because the developer doesn't have time to develop it. Awkward. So, starting out with Korea, here's the thing about Korea. All the games in Korea, all the sets in Korea were pretty one-sided. You know, looking at it, there are 6 played, right? So, and of those, we have 5 3-0s. This is legit 5 3-0s. Blossom ended up dropping 1 game to Team Ace, kind of due to a silly mistake, mostly, and drafting a relatively hard to execute comp and then not executing well with it. So it's hard to recommend a series from Korea this week, despite the fact that Korea is the best region in, or at least has the best teams in the world. Crisby2, thank you for the follow. But I think Tempest versus Miracle is in some ways the most interesting. Just because Miracle is probably the best not top team. Does that make sense? Like, there's the 3 clear top teams, and then there's Miracle, who's like a distant 4th. And Tempest is probably the top team. Thank you for the bits, LDAPTV. So, in that sense, it's kind of interesting. But honestly, Korea this week was pretty boring, because the matches were pretty one-sided. Moving over to EU. EU actually had some crazy upsets this weekend. It was really interesting. Fnatic beat Method 3-1, which arguably was expected, although a lot of people were very impressed with how Method was doing, and Fnatic seemed a little shaky. And then Liquid lost 3-2 to Diamond Skin. Diamond Skin managed to just like eke out a win in that set. And then Zealots beat Fnatic. Dignitas, of course, still remains pretty much undefeated with 2 more 3-0s this weekend. So that puts us in an interesting situation where Dignitas is clearly the top team in EU. As everyone expected, Dignitas is kind of the definition of a well-done super team in a lot of ways. They're just crazy good right now, overall. So I'm going to recommend one of the 2 upsets, and I'm actually going to give you guys an option. If you guys want to see how important solo laning is, and how you can abuse having someone who's not 100% comfortable in the solo lane role, and turn that into wins, Fnatic versus Zealots is a really good set. Fnatic versus Zealots is a really good set because Bad Benny is not doing as well as he should be in the solo lane. He's struggling with the role swap quite a bit, it feels like, to me, at least. And I think Zealots did a good job of exploiting that. Also, and this is going to come up, someone asked a question about this later. in the post-show questions, I'm going to talk about it, but I'm just going to mention it here, that Hanzo Tassadar is one of the most busted things in the game. And Zealots just kept drafting Hanzo Tassadar. And Fnatic kept letting them have it. And they kept winning with it. Which I think is a larger reason that they won. But I do think that Bad Bunny is not performing very well in the solo lane. I don't think he's made that transition from the tank mindset yet. And I have some personal experience with this because B-Kid is a tank player originally on GFE who is transitioning to the solo lane. And I have been working with B-Kid earlier for the last 3 months about making that mental transition about what his job is. And it's but I'm surprised you call Miracle number 4 in Korea and Blossom 3 won them earlier. Well, historically Miracle was number 4 in Korea. Let's put it that way. Historically Miracle was number 4 in Korea. But Blossom is looking much better this year, but it's hard to place exactly where Blossom is right now because their performances haven't been entirely consistent. So we're just going to have to see where that shakes out. I just don't know. I just don't know. Korea is such a grab bag below the top 3. You just never know who's going to be in there. If you make the argument that are all fighting it out for 4th, then that's still like you can see the gap between the top and the number 4. You can still see that gap even if it's but yeah, I haven't been impressed with Korea in general outside of the top 3 this season. Yeah. So Liquid versus Diamond Skin is a pretty different story. Like, Diamond Skin was constantly pressured throughout the series. They managed to take a nice win in Game 1, and then it seems pretty clear to me that Korea is like 3-2-3. I guess you could make that argument that Korea is 3-2-3. Maybe. I also think that different metas in Korea suit different teams. All right, so we're gonna digress. We're gonna go back talking about Korea for a second. When the mid-season brawl came around last year, EU had the better meta, and historically EU has always had the better meta. So much so that Korean teams would show up, scrim EU teams, steal their meta, play it better, and win with it. That was a good portion of last year and a half in professional HOTS, except for BlizzCon. At BlizzCon, Fnatic went to boot camp in Korea before BlizzCon, and other EU teams followed them because they kind of had to. Like, you can't stay in EU and play against the other, BlizzCon team if you want to really, really get better. And when Fnatic got to Korea, they said Korea's meta is better. I think that's the first time I've ever heard EU players be like, Korea's meta is better. It's just better than ours. And they were terrified because Korea had been playing their meta for a long time and was really firmly set on like all the little nuances of it. And they had to play, they were playing catch up for the first time in competitive that year, basically. Bear in mind that Fnatic won against Korean teams, or Fnatic won mid-season brawl. Dignitas actually were named the Korean Killers because they beat the Korean teams and then ended up going up in the finals against Fnatic. So we're in a new patch. We have new heroes. There's lots of things to figure out. It's not clear which region has the best meta right now. It actually won't be clear what the best meta is until mid-season brawl. So the clashes will give us some indication, particularly the Western Clash will give us some indication of which is the stronger meta. But until mid-season brawl, when all the metas play against each other, we just don't know what the strongest meta is going to be. We can speculate. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation going on in the professional community all the time about what they think the strongest meta is. So the point of all this is that some teams in general play certain heroes and certain styles better than other teams. Teamfight metas are something that Tempest excels in. Anytime you have a meta where you can win the game via drafting a comp that just kills people, and then you team fight, and then you win the team fight, and then you can do things in the game, that's a really big deal for teams like Tempest. Ballistics, especially when Noblesse was on it, was a macro team. If you could macro and win games, and that was the meta, you would just get shit on by Noblesse. Like, he would just out macro you. You could. It was absurd. There would be a 0-kill game, like 0 kills on either sides, and Noblesse's team would be 4 levels up, and you'd be like, "What the fuck? How did that happen?" Well, macro is how that happened. That's not exaggeration. Well, the 4 levels is an exaggeration. It was actually like 3, but it was consistently 3 levels in macro metas. So Korea's in a weird place because I feel like their top 3 are really good at maybe 2 styles of play, like 1.5 to 2 styles. And depending on which the meta is emphasizing, who's the top could rotate quite a bit. It could be KSV, it could be Ballistics, it could be Tempest. In a teamfight meta, I think Tempest is going to be the top team. But then you move down the ranks, and I think each of the teams in Korea has a aspect of the game that they are okay at, that they are actually pretty good at. I'm talking about the pro level. I'm saying they're okay for pro teams. They're not like okay for the average game. And in a different meta, if like there's a patch change and like one hero becomes viable or a different type of strategy becomes viable, Korea could become very, very shaken up very quickly. So I don't know if Korea is 3-2-3 or if Korea happens to, or the game happens just be in a place where there's a certain meta that makes it look that way. Right, Tempest is clearly the top team in Korea right now, but I think that's because we're in such a they are particularly Korea is such a heavy team fight meta as a region, and Tempest has always been that team. That's why I'm a little uncertain about who's number 4 in Korea, because I don't know if they're number 4 just because of the meta or if they're number 4 because there actually is a significant gap. Changing over. Okay. Team Liquid versus Diamond Skin. So, Ballistic Tempest is yet to happen. It has, but I think Tempest is going to win against Ballistics in the current meta. I think that's what's going to happen. But I agree it has not yet happened, and I could be wrong. But someone can clip that, and you can save it for a prediction, see if I was right. Diamond Skin, we got to see Blaze as an offlaner. That's a fun reason to watch this match. Even though he did lose both times. I don't know if Blaze is very good, guys. I don't think he's a tank. I think he's a questionable offlaner. He does have a lot of wave clear. He has a lot of wave clear, but I don't know if that's enough. And I think it was just the thing that struck me about the series that I really liked was the tenacity of Diamond Skin. It never looked like they were giving up. It never looked like they sort of threw in the towel. They really bitterly fought for this win and got it. And I don't know, when I was watching the games, it really felt like Diamond Skin's passion came through to me in a lot of ways. So that's why I would recommend watching Diamond Skin versus Team Liquid. If you want to watch Fnatic versus Zealots, that was a good series too. But one of those two would be my recommendation for you. And then North America. Painful week in North America. Freedom does end up going 3-2 over Tempo Storm. So the top 3, Team 12, Tempo, and Freedom, have all sort of started playing their matches against each other. Fnatic versus Zealots for Chris carry. Chris played really well. Team 12, 3-1 Simplicity. Not surprising there. And I would recommend watching Tempo Storm versus Team Freedom. I think this was the best set. It had some interesting drafts. It had some fun stuff. It had some weird stuff. I can say now that Trogal has been played against us in scrims on Volskaya. There's a question specifically about Volskaya in the post-show question, so I'm going to go over that in a little bit. But the big thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure a lot of people are curious, is what happened versus LFM Esports. Michael is very much the pillar of our team in a lot of ways. If we have any... He's the shot caller, which makes a big difference to having your shot caller on point and focused. He asked me to talk about it until he had announced it, but now he has announced it on Twitter. Him and his girlfriend of 2 years broke up the night before, and he didn't sleep. So our shot caller and sort of the pillar of our team, the heart of our team, was distracted that entire set. He was just gone. And it reflected in the play of the entire team, because once your shot caller isn't paying attention and is distracted, everyone on the team stops being a team. They stop operating as a unit. Yeah, he still shot called the entire match, and he himself acknowledges that he did not play well. If you go back and watch Michael's play during those games, unfortunately, he didn't tell us about it until after the match was over, so we didn't know it was wrong. But that's why we took that loss to LFM. I don't think that... I think if Michael had been on point, that series would have been very, very different. But even go look at... You go look back and look at the cast, and Jay-How and Gilly both commented on a number of mistakes that he made. So I can't really recommend that series as much as I would like to at some point one of these weeks recommend my own team series in an unbiased fashion. So I apologize for that on behalf of the team. Moving over to China. So China is by far the weirdest region. It is easily the worst region of the major regions at this point. I think we can all acknowledge that. But still early in the series, you can recover. We have 4 games left. I actually would have to check with DB Smiley what exactly it means. I think if we win all of our remaining games and certain other things happen, we can still go to Clash. But we have to win all of our remaining games. So it's rough. It's a high bar considering we haven't played Tempo or Team 12 yet. Anyway, China. So here's the thing about China. China has a best of 2 format. You get 1 point all of your remaining series, or straight up 3-0s? All of our remaining series. It's possible that some of them would need to be 3-0s to account for tiebreaks, because game or set score matters for certain tiebreaker rules after head-to-head. So minimum we need to win every remaining series, I think. That's our minimum. And then a match score might also factor in. And then some other people will have to play different games. So China's really weird right now. Half the games aren't even cast. They're not even aired. So the ones that have a VOD link, and like these aren't like missing VOD links that the Master League admins missed. These are just not games that have been cast, because they're not going to be cast. Master League did manage to get their hands on the replays, and I imagine the replays will be posted to Master League. I have copies of them myself. So if you guys are really curious about what happened in these games, like you see the draft, you can go and look at them. But it's very difficult for me to recommend a series from China when half of them aren't aired. And it's a best of 2. I think best of 2 is kind of a weird format. They're not casted on China even. I believe they're not even casted in China, no. Because they're played at the same time. So the way, like, in order to be efficient time-wise, because HOTS isn't very popular and they have to be at a live venue, they play the sets at the same time, and then they only cast half of them. I don't believe they're both casted. One of them they might both be casted in Chinese on like a Chinese network. Slapjack, welcome back to the guest list. 8 months in a row. God, I can't believe I've had a sub button for 8 months. I do not feel like I've had a sub button for 8 months, guys. Yeah, Chinese also only cash out. Slapjack would know. So that's what I thought. So China is just a mess. Between the way it's being managed and the fact that it's a best of 2, the fact that only half the matches are casted, it's really hard for me to recommend watching China at all. In addition to the fact that China as a region is just so far down now that all of the top players have left for other games because they knew they could make more money in other games. There's just no money in HOTS in China, and with no money, there's no talent. It's just sort of the way it works across the board. Whenever you don't pay people enough, talented people will be like, well, I'm not going to put all that work in if I'm not getting paid. There's so many opportunities in esports in China playing so many games that it doesn't make sense to play a game that's not paying you a living wage if you're on a top team. And that's where China is. So if China gets better, I'll start recommending games. I'm going to continue to watch the games for China, just because, you know, maybe they'll come up with something interesting in the meta. Maybe there'll be a team that just catapults out ahead. But the way China is right now, I can't recommend it. I wanted to. I went and, you know, watched. I looked at the games and I was like, hopefully there's something, and there just wasn't. So, moving on to the post-show questions, excuse me, from the Discord. Tempo Storm versus Team 12, Game 3. Why did Team 12 put 2 people in the Protector? It's an A. I just realized that because the VOD links don't go up, I'm going to have to do this via... So this is Tempo Storm versus Team 12. Which should be... Yeah, I'm not blaming Master League here. Master League gets the links to the VODs as soon as they're up on YouTube, but Blizzard is really slow about uploading them to YouTube. Wait, am I... Tempo Storm. This is one of the last matches played, which means this should be near the top. No, I'm not. It's Tempo Storm versus Team 12, not Tempo Storm versus Team Freedom. So this is actually one of the first matches played. I can add links to my questions. I don't know what Blizzard is doing with Heroes, to be honest. Like, I don't entirely understand what Blizzard's long-term goal is with Heroes. Game 3. Here we go. So the question is, roughly 18 minutes in game time. Right around here. Why did Team 12 put 2 people in the Protector? It was roughly at 18 minutes. So, as I've said on my YouTube video, the Protector is pretty trash. It is really bad. Chaos OS did a math article on the Protector. I believe that was when he was still writing for Liquid. You can go check it out there. Google Chaos OS math Trigolf Protector. It pops right up in Google. The Protector is just really, really bad. The laser does a significant amount of damage, but basically, there's just not much the Protector can do, so you shouldn't put 2 people in it. And I would actually say that putting Greymane in particular in it is a mistake, because Greymane can do a shitload of damage to buildings and has enough health that it's really hard to focus and kill him in general. Which means if Greymane's not in the Protector and the Protector is eating shots for him, it's kind of like a Sylvanas effect where the pushing power of Greymane gets enhanced quite a bit. It is probably worth it sometimes to have one person get in and cast the laser on cooldown, but the laser has like a 16-second cooldown or 14-second cooldown. It's very significant. So this should just not happen. You should just not do this. And the only thing I can say to this is NA. Like, we haven't seen a single EU team put 2 people in the Protector unless it was to use the abilities and then hop right pad out, or unless they left an NA, or they left a seat open so that someone could hop in as an ice block like effect. EU teams are just using the Protector better than NA teams. And that's just the way it is. That's kind of an embarrassing answer, but it's the right answer. So, Volskaya drafts seem surprisingly teamfight focused. What's up with this? Volskaya sucks as a map. So if you're on Infernal Shrines, you can lose the teamfight, win every shrine, and win the game. If you're on Tomb of the Spider Queen, you can out wave clear your opponent. If they turn in, it doesn't matter because you have better wave clear. If you turn in, you have so much wave clear that the spiders push really far because your lanes are always pushed up. If you're on Cursed Hollow, you can win bosses automatically and then not even care about tributes or teamfight as long as your wave clear and your laning and your macro are really good. So maps where the objective is strong, you don't need to have a comp that can win the team fight to win because the objective matters. If the objective on a map doesn't matter, how do you win the game? Well, you have to find a way to kill their buildings. Okay? If you try to kill their buildings, they're going to come fight you. What happens then? Whoever wins the fight wins the game. So what pros have discovered is that in order to win on Volskaya, at some point you're going to need to kill the enemy team, which means you're going to need to win a team fight. So what have we seen as a result of that? We've seen Tempo Storm break out Tassadar, Hanzo, Ariel. Ariel has an infinitely stacking quest at 16 that gives her basically infinite healing past a certain point. Oh, nice. Hanzo does absurd amounts of damage. Tassadar has infinite Archon. Cho'Gall was something we saw Tempo Storm try this week. I would expect just massive wave clear and all lane push. If you have massive wave clear and a lane push comp and they have a team fight comp and you're trying to push a lane and they come and fight you and kill you, all of the bonus experience that you got from pushing is given back to the enemy team for the kills. So, yeah. Basically, you can treat Volskaya as if it doesn't have an objective, except for maybe the heal camp. And just whoever wins the biggest team fight at 20 wins the game. So what do you draft in those circumstances? HHE drafted Asmodean and almost won with it. Like, HHE would have won with Asmodean against Tempo Storm on Volskaya if they hadn't fucked it up. Like, they fucked up. It wasn't that Tempo Storm won, it was that HHE lost. So that's how you play Volskaya. In the non-pro scene, I think going for just a push comp and 5-manning a lane may actually be the most fun way to play the map, because it means you don't have to, it doesn't have to fucking last forever. So if you want to know how to do a 5-man lane push, go see my Hanamura video. Very similar concept. But that's where Hanamura is, and it sucks. Tempo Storm versus Team 12, Game 3. Where is the Lava Brain? Do we need Lava Brain? So, Volskaya Foundry. See, here's the thing. Like, it doesn't matter. You have to win the team fight. You have to win the team fight. So Lava Wave doesn't do anything in this situation. Although Smash, like, didn't hit this game. So just macro only matters on Volskaya in the sense that you need to keep your lanes cleared, but other than that, like, nothing matters. It doesn't matter. You don't need globals. You don't need, like, anything. You just fucking clear waves and then fight. Would E-build rag be good in competitive? There's actually a huge debate about what the best rag build is in competitive. And mostly, like, some EU players, like Alex the Progi, are like, E-build is probably the best build in the right circumstances. So, but only EU. I don't know any other EU players. I don't know any other pro players that aren't EU that like E-build rag ever. So, Cloud was terrible in the offlane. They were forced to put him on Zeratul. Zeratul is being run as an offlaner who catches soak. Also, that's pretty much the way that Glau has always played Zeratul. He wasn't. They weren't being forced to do that. That's how he was playing the game. Glau was having a rough transition into being an offlaner. That is true. But offlaning's a really hard role. On a scale from LOL to Omega LOL, how LOL is NA right now? I don't consider that a valid question. Tempestorm versus Team 12. Why is Tempo starting to pick this much random Tassadar without a specific hypercarry? Or is Hanzo the hypercarry? Hanzo is the hypercarry. Hanzo is fragile and does shitloads of damage. You know what fragile heroes need? Shields. They don't need heals. They need shields. Also, Oracle plus Vision Arrow on... Sonic Arrow, excuse me, on Hanzo is the best vision combination in the game, I think. There's technically ways of getting more vision, but you wouldn't want to draft the heroes that have those tools together. Like, you wouldn't want to throw in an Abathur there for mines. You just wouldn't want to do that. So the best vision combination in the game, the best murking, and really good wave clear, in addition to, you know, either Force Wall or Archon. Bear in mind that Archon is a level 20 win condition all on its own. This was Volskaya, but it was split on other maps as well. And then either that or Force Wall. Force Wall is also a level 20 win condition on its own. It's kind of insane. So Hanzo is the hypercarry, but Tassadar is actually an interesting place where he counters certain heroes, and he helps counter kill comps in general, and doesn't necessarily 100% need a hypercarry to do that. And a big part of that is wave clear. Any hero that offers wave clear is automatically viable. It's just a question of, do people play it? Why does Beetle and Noob never get played? It has good win rates. That's not an HGC question, really. I'll actually talk about that after I do PTR notes if you really want to go into it. Fnatic feels very weak, top 3 for EU. Will they bounce back to place? That's up to them, honestly, Zadok. It feels like the weaknesses that Fnatic has right now are fixable. The problem is that they lost the best offlaner in EU and got someone who was a tank player to replace him. And it's just a question of, can Bad Benny mentally transition into that role? If he can mentally transition to that role, Fnatic's going to look a lot stronger. But Fnatic also has always played their own meta and their own style, no matter what meta the game was going through. When double support was the meta, Fnatic had like a 25% win rate with double support. They didn't play double support. They asked themselves, okay, how can we win against double support since we're not going to play it and we don't want to play it well? Right? And they did. They found a way. So, but it required really clear, crisp, well-timed execution across multiple heroes in some cases. And by swapping in new people, they've lost that gift that they worked so hard for, of having just that perfect timing. Obviously, that's an issue. It's just a question of whether or not they can bring it back up. Tempo versus 12 Towers. Why the Dibbles Lightning Breath? Team 12 just plays Lightning Breath. You would have to ask Justine why he thinks Lightning Breath is better. Lightning Breath has been played occasionally in pro play in other regions, but usually it's only on shrines, and it's a zoning tool. And when it was like, Rich played Diablo, so Rich as the offlaner played Diablo and took Lightning Breath on shrines. I don't think we've seen other people, pro players, take Lightning Breath as the tank. And then particularly in a couple of those, like in one of those games, they had Medivh and they had Leyline APOC as a combo that was like guaranteed to get value if the Leyline hit, and they still went Lightning Breath. So I don't agree with the decision. Lightning Breath does a significant amount of damage. It does act as a web break and a zoning tool. So, you know, if they web someone and they dive in, you can be like, I'm going to zone this area and I'm going to kill the cocoon at the same time. And it's sort of, it can counter in that sense. I don't know if that's an entirely valid reason to take it, and it didn't apply in every game, right? So the this is tempo versus 12 on Towers of Doom. And maybe they were just taking it for web break. I really feel like they were just taking it for web break. Our team's only picking a noob for the cocoon? Basically, yeah. I mean, they're picking him for two reasons. One, he has an area stun. He has a secondary stun that's also area. And then he has cocoon. That's it. That's what a noob brings to the table. Tastar Hanzo, talked about that. Thoughts on Alex and how are we starting to see her more, i.e. tempo versus 12 on Infernal Shrines? I think Alex is really strong on maps where the objective is strong, and she can help you secure it with Dragon. So if you have to control a fixed zone, you can just pop Dragon and do something. That's good. So like she might be good on Tomb because you can just lane with her, and then you can bada bing, bada boom, secure a turn in for your team or deny a turn in for the enemy team. She's obviously good on Shrines. We've seen her played on Shrines several times now. She could be good on Sky Temple if you have to like fight over a. If your team chooses to fight over temples, you just like pop Dragon, and the enemy team's like, okay, I'm leaving. Which, you know, as long as you have good macro, could end up putting you ahead on every single solo shrine or solo temple phase. Like you win the bottom on Sky Temple kind of automatically with Alex Dragon. But you have to play around Dragon. Dragon is Alex Strauss' most important cooldown by far. So if you're not drafting Alex with the question of how do I use Dragon correctly, then you shouldn't be drafting Alex. But there are maps where that's fine. Freedom versus Heroes Hearth Esports. Why did HGC try to take the fight on boss? Uther on the far side of the map, no D-shield 4v5, and Tyro just attacked boss free. What were they expecting to happen? But if you're watching, which game are you talking about? Because you don't mention which one, and I feel like there were a lot of boss fights. You didn't specify a game. If you guys don't specify a game, it's going to be rough for me to always know what you were talking about. Because I do watch every single game every weekend. I need a little bit of help in the memory department. So is the meta super diverse right now, or very uncertain as teams are trying new things? Both. The meta is relatively diverse, and part of that diversity is teams are trying things in scrims, and it's working in scrims. So they're bringing it into the limelight and seeing if it works on the big stage. The maps that series were Sky Temple, Tomb, Infernal, and Towers. So Sky Temple, Infernal, Sky Temple, Tomb, and Infernal all have bosses. Okay. I mean, I figured you were talking about the Sky Temple game, but I don't like to assume. So it's not that boss fight. It's this boss fight. It's the next one. All right, so this is the fight. Team Freedom is... Uther's dead. Team Freedom gets 20 from Trickle Experience, and they just go. They're just like, we're on boss now. We can race it. If Team Freedom does this correctly, this boss should only take 6 seconds. Like, if they do it perfectly, it will take 6 seconds to finish. They're not doing it perfectly. Loading at leash. Zera is harassing the backline and getting the dismount, making this not a 5v5. And they're just posturing for the race. All right. So at this point, this is a 17-minute scaling boss. It's 20 versus 20. Heroes Hearth has Tychus, and but did not take Big Red Button, right? This is the run and gun talent that gives you additional charges. So even though they have Odin, they don't have the anti-siege that you would normally expect. There's enough minion waves here that Infinite Archon is not going to drop. So it's going to be very difficult for Heroes Hearth Esports to defend this. If they just given up boss, there's a good chance they lose regardless. So they tried to get the dismounts, they tried to get the pickoffs on the flanks. And at this point, I feel like they feel a little desperate. So McIntyre is just in there. He gets deleted. The arrow goes. And I think that there was probably miscommunication about exactly how far out BBJ was. They should have, I think, just backed off and defended. With Big Red Button, this would have actually been a very easy defense. And they would have ended up being down a keep. But then boss would have been off the table, so they could have won a team fight over a shrine, the next shrine phase. That was just a really rough position to be in, because they can just, without Big Red Button, they can just lose straight up from this boss pushing if Team Freedom pushes with it. But I don't think that they thought, but they probably thought BBJ was closer than he was. That would be my guess. And McIntyre probably didn't mean to die as Zeratul right there. Tempo versus Team 12 on Dragonshire. Why the fuck were March and Welly picked over Entomb and Ring? This question feels personal somehow. It's like... Alright, so Entomb is good against... Entomb's not really good against Hanzo. It might seem like it is, but Hanzo's range on his D is so insane that he can usually, like, if he's usually standing near a wall. Especially on Dragonshire. And you entomb him, he can just hop over that wall because he's still standing near it. You can't entomb Muradin. You can't entomb Tassadar. June can go massive shove and just... And you're gone. And Glaurung has Blink. So you literally, best case scenario, entomb Stukov and trade your heroic for his heroic, but yours is a shorter cooldown than his, so that's like a decent-ish trade. Other than that, you literally cannot entomb anyone and have it mean anything unless you're playing for 20 and going for the level 20 entomb upgrade. And without a setup, they didn't have Mosh, they didn't have entomb. Ring is a little bit risky when you don't have no setup. When you have no setup, the enemy team has that level of mobility because they can just blink or jump out or what have you. That's why. But I don't think it mattered. Team 12 can't win this game. The way Tempo Storm executed this comp with Hanzo just poking bottom, like you have to walk into that bottom shrine to take it, and then you just get W'd to death. And if you stage dive, you just get shoved. And if you try to walk in, you're silenced because of Stukov arm. Like Tempo had bottom. With this combination of heroes, they hold bottom forever. You cannot take bottom away from them without committing a full 5-man. In which case, Zeratul is just clearing top, pushing top. And the wave clear from Tassadar means he can constantly just anchor mid, clear, and rotate down. It's like very difficult. You can't surprise them on the rotation with the Tassadar and the Hanzo vision. And you can't global in with EDC and win because of shove. So you can't ever take bottom. Unless Tempo makes a mistake, you never get bottom, which means you never get a Dragon Knight. And if you don't stay bottom and keep eating poke, Tempo can just push in and start chunking your buildings. Couldn't you go for the Wraith form and cancel out Massive Shove? You can entomb and then immediately E, but if you entomb and then immediately E, you're basically trading 2 heroics and a cooldown to maybe kill June, because you have to throw Ring on him. What is Zeratil's role in the new meta? Is he seeing play because he's good, or because I haven't seen anyone play Zeratil as anything but an offlaner. So he's just a very, very safe offlaner. And he can threaten certain squishy backline heroes. But I think the biggest thing is that he's just very, very safe. He's never going to die when played well. So if your offlaner will never die if played well, that's a pretty good advantage to have on a map like Dragonshire, where always having that presence in the top lane means that the enemy team always have to have someone up there to match you, because otherwise you just walk onto the point for free. Goku did go March in this game. The question was, why didn't they go Entomb? And how do you get value out of Entomb in this scenario? You have to Entomb June specifically, who is by far the safest support player in North America. Like, his positioning is always perfect. He's never in any sort of danger of Entomb mattering. So you have to Entomb the safest support player in North America. You have to immediately E so you don't get shoved, and then your team has to be in position to kill June instantly off that Entomb with all the vision control of Tassadar and Hanzo being like, nah, we're not going to let you position in a way that threatens us. It's not realistic. Leftovers versus Tricked game 1, right near the beginning. Tricked is doing bot camp, Leftover shows up and Tricked backs off. A few seconds later, Leftovers goes to the same camp, but doesn't back up when Tricked shows up and gets the camp nearly for free. What exactly went on here that Tricked got bullied off the camp so easily, but Leftovers didn't? That's a really specific question. I think actually, I'm going to refresh this. I think actually VODs are up now. Yes! At least some of them are. Leftovers versus Tricked game 1. I thought specific questions were good. I'm okay with specific questions. I just think it's funny. Like, that's a highly specific question. All right, so you can see on the mini map. You can't really see it in the VOD, but they're fighting over the bottom camp here, and they got one Causer minion down. They back up, look for the reset. Trick just immediately leaves. They don't really want to fight over this at this point in the game. They also need to make sure they're catching the wave. They don't want to lose the wave advantage. And Leftovers gets the wave advantage, rotates down, and starts the camp. So I feel like ETC was trying to anchor here because he thought they might rotate through this direction rather than anchoring here. But that just... And now they're anchoring. That's Stormbolt down. They have a zoning route thrown out, so both teams have used a CC. But fighting in this choke against a Tychus is really dangerous. So even with the route down, if ETC gets a power slide here, he can probably get if no one steps up except the Muradin is probably going to die, because Muradin actually isn't survivable in the early game. He's not. He needs his 10, he needs his 13, he needs his 16 to be really, really survivable. He has his trait, which makes him good at trading damage, but it doesn't make him good at not just getting blown up. And getting blown up is something a Tychus does really, really well to high health heroes. And so there's no way they get the camp with the... And also ETC has a knockback, right? So they had the zoning route to prevent anyone from getting too close. As the camp died, ETC stepped up, and they know they're just going to knock back. So there's no upside for Tricked Esport in this scenario, given the talents and abilities that are available for Leftovers right now. There's just no upsides. That if they play perfectly, they probably still lose the camp. And if Leftovers make a mistake, maybe they get a kill. But if Leftovers just plays average and Tricked plays perfectly, there's still a chance they get chunked. So in chokes like that, ETC is just very, very threatening. And if you can kill the tanks, then the enemy team always has to be aware that you can kill their tank and has to, pick their battles in a lot of ways. Plus, fighting over camps against a team that has knockbacks is much more difficult because they can knock you off the point and then they get the camp anyway. This is one of the reasons that ETC's level 4 talent is so broken. Loudspeakers is honestly broken in competitive. If anyone was curious why ETC was broken, it's 2 high impact heroics, an area stun, and his level 4 talent. That combined, especially with 13, that if you hit 2 targets, reduces the cooldown so you can constantly spam your W. Like, it's so painful to play against at a high level. I'm actually consistently surprised that ETC isn't being valued more in other regions, but we're kind of in a damage meta. There are certain heroes that are so good at damage, and even, like, Muradin's a good tank, or ETC's a good tank. Not arguably, he's arguably the best tank right now. But there's good enough tanks, whereas there's nothing comparable to Hanzo and Genji in Greymane. Like, we're in a damage meta in many ways, in my opinion. Less HGC, more BOE in general, though also applicable to Praxis to some extent. 2-lane maps are radial, not vertically symmetrical. This is true. So for those of you who don't actually know this, so for instance, this bush right here is over here. That means that if you were to map this map and spin it as opposed to flip it, it would be symmetrical across the spin, but not symmetrical across the flip. This does actually matter. Minion waves are on slightly different paths. They'll actually meet closer to the blue side in bottom lane and closer to the red side in the top lane. So technically the solo lane for red would preferably be top, and for blue it would preferably be bottom. The only region that's ever really exploited this to a large extent is Korea, where they would always just go 4-1 in opposite lanes and push and trade forts at the start of the game. Like, every game, that was the meta in Korea. They're like, 4v4? Why? Why don't you just go kill a fort? And they would just go kill the fort. They would just trade forts, and the first immortal would come up, and both teams would be down a fort. It was just the way it was. Does this give an advantage to left or right side anyway? A very small advantage, but yes. In the above game, the solo lane was top. This was the lane that Tricked had their bruiser camp, whereas leftovers had their bruiser in the 4-man. Is this ever significant where the camps that push mirrored lanes aren't mirrored themselves, or is it usually just a wash? It is significant at the very highest levels of play. Again, it was the meta in Korea, and that was one of the reasons. Although in Korea, it was a little bit interesting, because blue would actually go top and push that fort, and red would go bottom and push that fort. And the reason was they knew their bruiser camp, if left uninterrupted, could relatively easily get the fort. But if they take the fort, there's no way the bruiser camp pushes all the way to the keep and gets the keep. So in their mind, they're saying, okay, we get this fort now, and then the bruiser camp will get the other fort later. It was a very specific meta, and there were lots of defensive heroes drafted in Korea at the time. No one was really like racing. It was all about winning the team fight mid, so the fights went on a long time. And you can build strategies around that. You actually can, but it's you have to stick to that for the whole game starting in the draft. It doesn't really apply in like Hero League or really anything but top pro level play, and they have to practice it quite a bit. Why doesn't GFE just ban Cursed Hollow with how bad the track record on it is so far? Our scrim results on Cursed are actually not that bad. Has your opinion of Blaze changed at all since release in terms of power level and usefulness? Nope. And I actually feel really validated by the fact that Blaze was played this week, and he was only played as an offlaner. Also, Blue Immortal spawns bot and Red spawns top. Also true. Blue Immortal does spawn top. And that's actually fixed now. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be 50-50. Like, it could be either one. It was always top and bottom, but it could be blue top or blue bottom. Now it's fixed. It's always going to spawn the same way, which means that we might see some more crisp laning arrangements on BOE. Blaze. Blaze has only been played as an offlaner. I think Blaze is probably an okay offlaner because he has good follow-up CC, which is something that a not tank is valuable for. And he has really good wave clear and really good sustain. And really good wave clear and really good sustain can be useful as a double soaker, right? So you have a good, strong 4-man that's just shoving a lane. And then Blaze is just like, boop, 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 clear. Boop, 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 clear. And he's just soaking waves. Yeah, it's kind of like a Zool sort of thing in some ways. Like his clear is really fast. He has a lot of wave clear for a relatively tanky hero. But I don't think he's a tank. I stick by that opinion. I just don't think he's a tank. Generic question pertaining to HGC in general. How often have you seen a team draft ETC and still lose that draft? Hanzo, Genji. I've seen teams draft all of those hero and still lose, but it is fairly rare. Because I feel like Hanzo is really strong, so all I have to do is draft protection for the Hanzo, and then it's like you won the draft. If Hanzo can't die, then the game's over. Hanzo is that strong. Is LFM making it to the HGC finals? I don't know. Why is LFM not stutter stepping Siege Giants and taking free damage? Same answer. I don't know. For the record, Siege Giants do 0 damage now if you just stutter step. What's the typical hero pool for a melee offlaner? Particularly, what do they play in maps that isn't a very, very strong solo lane? Well, there's a confusion there that is causing the question, which is solo lane and off lane are the same role in a team usually, but they don't mean the same thing. A solo laner. So on maps where there's a solo lane, you have to understand what you're doing in the solo lane. Are you trying to win the lane? Are you trying to win the point? Are you just trying to match your opposite number to make sure they can't push because they're a good pushing hero? Like Illidan versus Zagara is a good example of this. If Zagara's on a map and Illidan's on the map, Illidan should always be in Zagara's lane. You should always swap around so that Illidan can beat the Zagara. At the pro level, I know if you don't play Illidan well, Illidan loses. Or whatever. If you have a Genji on Tomb of the Spider Queen, Genji should be versus the Leoric in whatever lane Leoric goes to. Like you should manage your lanes. But an offlaner does more than just solo lane. An offlaner catches soak. McIntyre calls it the Trash Man, which I don't think that's a great name, but it kind of explains the concept. You're just making sure you're always catching the soak. So Abathur is an offlaner, but not a solo laner. Vikings are offlaners and can be solo laners. Mathael with Pale Horse is a good offlaner. Mathael with a different level 1 talent is a good solo laner because it's very hard to gank him. ETC post 10 with Stage Dive is a good offlaner, but he can also be the tank. Right? So the typical hero pool for the offlaner, actually, let's ignore typical. The ideal hero pool for an offlaner is every melee assassin, every tank, Abathur, Vikings, every tank, every melee assassin, every global, Abathur, and Vikings. That's the ideal hero pool for an offlaner. If you could play all of those heroes perfectly and know all their matchups in every lane, you would be Wubby, basically. Actually, I don't think it's true. I don't think Wubby plays Vikings. But like that's the ideal situation. Typically, an offlaner will be able to play the melees that are strong in the meta at the moment that are good at offlaning. So in this case, it's Zeratul, Mathael, Leoric, Sonya. I guess in EU, Greymane is being used as an offlaner quite a bit in certain compositions, which I think is interesting. Blaze is being used as an offlaner now. But the reality is that you probably can't play all those heroes. Pro players who play 8 hours a day or more aren't good on all those heroes at the same time. They're just not. If I asked B-Kid to have a hero pool that big, he'd look at me like I was insane. He'd like 3 heads. He'd be like, I can't play all those heroes. I don't know what you want me to do. Tempest in 2016 was really famous for having 3 heroes per person. That was it. Everyone on Tempest played 3 heroes. If you go back and look at their drafts, they basically had 3 heroes that everyone played. And they were just like always drafted combinations of those 3 heroes, and that was their comp, and they won. They won 2016 Worlds. Well, Summer World, Summer Championship. So if you're on like a team, figure out what your best offlaners are and tell your team, these are what I can play, and then your drafter should be able to manipulate the draft that you always end up in a favorable matchup. Wobbe doesn't really play ABBA either, though, so does off-tank really need TLB ABBA as never flex? You can have it so that other people can play those heroes. It just depends on hero pools in a lot of ways. Like, the ideal offlaner would be able to play all those heroes. The god tier ideal offlaner would play all those heroes. It just doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes it's a hero pool thing. Like, Kyocha is probably the best Abathur player in the world, so even though he's a support now, or plays support for KSV, if they draft an Abathur comp, they still put Kyocha on Abathur. So part of it's a hero pool thing, and part of it's a draft thing. Yeah. But if you wanted to like start playing an offlaner for a team, you should identify your strongest, like maybe your 4 or 5 strongest offlaners, like Arthas, Mathael, Blaze, Leoric, Zagara. Let's say those are your 5 strongest offlaners for whatever reason. Just tell your team that. Always make sure that people... Ideally, you don't want to role swap very much, but you also want people on their strongest hero in a given draft. So if you're playing like a very different style of drafting in one particular game, like you think of a comp and like, oh, this comp's really good, but you have to like shuffle a little bit, you should figure that out very concisely as a team. It is very difficult to do. I'm not like, it's not easy. If this were easy, if it were easy to play every hero at the same level, we would have a much more diverse meta than we do. But the reality is that part of the reason the meta becomes limited is because people want to win, and they win when they execute better, and they execute better on heroes they have more games on, and that they practice more in scrims. Miracle versus Tempest, game 1. Tempest had a level... this is actually a really interesting question. I was actually happy someone asked this. But we're going to have to go... I have to refresh the page real quick. So Miracle versus Tempest. Game 1, Infernal Shrines. Oh, the VOD's not up yet. All right, we're gonna have to go find it on. This was the second to last set, so it should be near the top of the highlighted games. So we just scroll down until we find Korea. Blossom versus Ace, Miracle versus Tempest. Game 1. All right. Alright, so the question is Miracle versus Tempest. Game 1. Tempest had level 16 advantage, and they back after Ancestral not landed on Leo. It was mostly because of Ancestral CD, or they wanted to save ults for Shrine soon, spawning. So this is the fight, Tempest versus Miracle. They're just invading the camp here. They're not really being too cocky about it. Bear in mind, fighting into a choke is really good for Cassia because of her heroic. It's also really good for Sanctification because you kind of naturally clump. Lots of really, really strong advantage. So they go for the pick here. They bait out Divine Shield and Sanct. And those are just, like, have been used now. So Ancestral misses and Leoric dies. So at this point, this is a 5v4. And the only heroics they have left are Cocoon and Go for the Throat. But also, Sanct and Divine Shield have been baited, and the Shrine is spawning. There's no way Miracle contests a talent tier down without their highly impactful heroics. So Tempest just backing off here wins the Shrine for free. Whereas if they kept fighting, there's a real possibility that they lose the 5v4. 5v4 at that point is technically an even fight. If you can get an objective for free or take an even fight and you're winning, which one do you pick? If you can get something for free or take a 50-50 coin flip on who wins something, which do you pick? Like, it's not even a decision, right? At that point, it's like, well, yeah, obviously I'm going to go take the free thing. Also, Leoric dead in this situation is actually better than Leoric alive, because he can ward for the objective 100% safely. What are you gonna do? Kill him again? He's already dead. Miracle versus Tempest game 2. Core race. If Uthers would defend instead of attacking, core difference would be 14% smaller. So, we're gonna... Some of these questions are spoilerific, by the way. Can't feed if you've already fed. Exactly. No, don't get my team ideas. All right. I'm going to back up a little bit because the core race is not quite started yet. All right. So, Tempest opts to go in for a core race. They have Siege Giants, and but that keeps just dead. Whereas Miracle has Catapults pushing in. They have Abathur Locust. Bear in mind, this is not a Locust build from Abathur. And so the question is, if Uther defends, is that the better decision? If he hearths... and defends, is that the better decision? Because he doesn't do much personal damage. But how does Uther... like, what does Uther do to defend this, really? I don't see what Uther does to defend that. Like, he can walk up and stun people? That's about it. He can walk up and stun people. The real reason that Tempest won this race is because they have race heroes. Sonya does a lot of damage to a core. Cassia does a lot of damage. Jaina actually does a surprising amount of damage to core. So I don't know if she has Icy Veins up, but if she has Icy Veins up, Jaina actually does an enormous amount of burst damage to core. Rhaegar, high auto attack. A noob can actually spam the shit out of his abilities. He can even rewind if he has it available, and the beetles do a not insignificant amount of damage. So Tempest just has straight up better core race. The only real advantage the Tempest has is they have the catapults, but obviously that doesn't matter. Earlier, maybe he can kill someone? I don't think so. I think that's the best call he could have made, is just racing. The problem is that they just didn't have the heroes that were alive that could do the race. If that had been a Locust build Abathur, it's quite... like, if it had been a Locust build Abathur, they would have won the race. But there's no way. There's just no way they win that race. Heroes do a lot of damage, is the takeaway here. Heroes do a lot of damage to buildings, and later on in the game, that damage... like, buildings don't scale, heroes do. So if 5 people can just take a tower at the beginning of the game, which they can, we've seen that, I don't know how many times we've seen that. 5 heroes go kill a tower and leave. The core does scale, but it stops scaling at 20 minutes. And different heroes just are very threatening to core no matter what. Illidan, Greymane, Rhaegar, Sonya, these heroes are always threatening to cores. And because of Anubarak's beetles, the core is not going to be doing any damage to heroes, because they can just spread for it. So Uther would have to 1v1 a ranged hero that has a tank and a healer to peel for them and heal them. Like, that's not realistic. There was no way to win that game. That was the best possible call, and it wasn't enough. Diamond Skin versus Team Liquid game 5, level 10 team fight. What went wrong for Team Liquid after it killed Rhaegar? Again, a very specific question. So, Diamond Skin versus Team Liquid. No, that's after. That's also after. All right, we're gonna run this on slow a little bit. There we go. So the question is, what went wrong for Team Liquid after they killed Rigor? So Rigor was a little overextended because of the bite. He ends up going down. We have Anande on the flank here, so they're a little... Diamond Skin's a little bit split. But Sport Billy was low because he committed very deep for that Rhaegar kill. Ends up going down. And at this point, Team Liquid realizes they don't have a tank. Splendor's a little caught out. He had to use Beat already, so it's not available. And they're kiting back. Bear in mind that Gul'dan is a teamfight hero who's... Gul'dan and Genji both are teamfight heroes. Should team be able to kill core as 5 men versus 5 live defenders? Depends on the comps. Like, you don't want to do that into a Li Ming. Li Ming is probably the best core defense hero in the game because of resets. But if you're the right kind of composition, you can just go 5-man core if it's low in the late game. And that's how Juice Pirates works, right? Juice Pirates, you just medevac to core and Tyrael hits Sanctification, you get a core to 50%. Holy Arena, level 20, you can just do that. If you have like a Greymane or if you have an Illidan, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can just go kill core to certain teams. So Team Liquid, Gul'dan and Genji are both incredibly dependent. Also, even Lucio. Like, these 3 heroes are very dependent on their heroics to have impact in a team fight. So Dragonblade, Horrify, and Beat were all down, whereas Diamond Skin hasn't used Sanctification, right? They still have that really impactful team. But also, if you look at their base kits, Hanzo just does a lot of damage. His heroic is just okay. It's not like it's, yes, it's a stun, I guess. It's global. It's kind of cool. But his base kit is like, this fucking kills people. Tyrael, base kit, actually very strong. People underestimate Tyrael's base kit quite a bit. EDC, base kit, crazy strong base kit. Greymane, one of the highest auto attack damage dealers in the game. Base kit. Not base kit. Base kit. Heroics have been used. They don't care. And they just go in and fight them. I can hear the comms like, turn around, sanctification, sanctification. I'll save you from the damage. Please turn around. What's the optimal Juice Pirates comp nowadays? The optimal Juice Pirates comp is always questionable. It always involves Raynor, Medic, Tyrael. But the other 2 slots are pretty flexible depending on the map and the draft. Because, like, Falstad isn't technically the best hero for Juice Pirates, but having the global can guarantee that you get to 10. And then Gust actually gives you like 3 to 4 more seconds on core. 3 to 4 more seconds on core from everyone is technically worth more than the damage you're giving up by drafting Falstad in most cases. Not in all cases, but in most cases. Similarly, Artanis does a shitload of damage to core with amateur opponent. And his blind heroic can actually give you like 2 to 3, sometimes 4, sometimes a full 4 more seconds on core. So optimal is always going to be a little bit questionable. Like even Cho'Gall with Shadow Bolt Volley technically is a lot of core damage. So you go Cho'Gall, Raynor, Tyrael, Medic. It sounds wonky as fuck, but that's like probably in the top 5 compositions for it. What about Gazlo with Robo? Gazlo with Robo is actually not bad. It's just a question of is his early game strong enough. But Robogaz does a lot of damage. He's up there. That's the thing. Like, there's a lot of heroes that do a lot of damage to buildings at level 10. Raynor's just like the top one by a large margin. Raynor's the top one by a large margin, not even counting Inspire. Like, it's just Hyperion that's doing all that damage. And then also he has Inspire. So Raynor is just, like, crazy obvious. And then, yeah, Tex is also right. You want to consider draft order. Like, you don't want to show the Tyrael Medic early. Method versus Fnatic. How can you defend backdoors like that? So this is not a question about one game, as some of you might think. It's a question about 2 games, because Method lost to Fnatic, making ballsy core calls twice. Twice this happened to them. It was just so amazing to watch live. And the answer is game sense and focusing the correct targets. So, for instance, we're just gonna go over the Battlefield of Eternity game, just the core part. I just realized I don't have water. That kind of sucks. Yeah, Gray, like picking Greymane first looks like a normal comp, but Antirial is kind of a normalish hero with Greymane, and then you last pick Rainer Morales, and everyone's like, "Oh fuck, I know what they're doing," but like you don't give it away early. All right. So Fnatic is backdooring. Bear in mind that Greymane is one of the best structure damage heroes, and Fnatic instantly starts backing. Arthas tries to stop the backs, and you can see from the cocoon cooldown that he instantly gets cocooned. Fnatic starts backing, Arthas tries to stop them, instant cocoon, and they keep backing. But then Fnatic backs up, right? And they stop. You see Tracer remounts, Tahaka starts walking up, and they said, oh, they backed up, they're not trying to backdoor. Malf is there, let's just kill Arthas. So they kill Arthas. And as soon as they show that they're not backing and they start to kill Arthas, Fnatic's like, fuck, let's just go. And they turn around. They turn around. And they use ISO and Divine Storm here. They only needed to use ISO or Divine Storm. They did not need to use both. This was actually the largest mistake, in my opinion, using both of those. And so Greymane and Greymane Clone are now on the core. Lucio had speed available, so this turnaround from Fnatic was fast. It was fast. Schwimpy blinks in. So they should be focusing the Greymane Clone here. Greymane Clone here is the most important target to kill because it's doing by far the most damage. It does 20% more damage, and Greymane didn't take any talents that like really increases damage in Worgen form. To core, specifically. Which means that Quacknix's clone should be the first thing to die. And you can see it is. They did a really good job there. And now it should be Mene. And you can see they're just chasing him around. They get the stun on him. Nicely done. Smexy should be the last target, so they kill Breeze next, which is correct. And it just wasn't quite enough. If they had had Divine Storm there, it would have been enough because they would have gotten Divine Storm off of that big 3-man route. So the question of how you defend against core calls like that is respect the heroes that are on the enemy team. If you have Greymane plus Abba and clones available, you can usually backdoor core. Like Greymane, just Greymane plus if the other 5 members of the enemy team are like at an objective. Twilight Dream missed Lucio. Also true. Twilight Dream did miss Lucio. And then beat would have been prevented. That was a really big deal. But really it comes down to game sense. Can the enemy team kill my core with the heroes that they have? That's the #1 thing you need to be asking yourself when these situations come up in the late game. It also happened on Infernal Shrines. And surprise, surprise, Fnatic also had Greymane. But then they also had Sonya, who's also really good at coring. So like Illidan can core. Greymane can core. Zarya with Feel the Heat can core. Like there's certain heroes that can kill core, and if the enemy has those heroes, you have to be paying attention to the backdoor. You have to respect it, even if it means that you have to give up a possible chance at winning the game. You have to respect it. They should have just backed. The Immortal probably would have gotten keep by itself if they just backed and 5-man pushed out the lane, right? That probably would have been okay. But then they also would have had to respect it for the rest of the game, which maybe is an impossible position to win from. So it's maybe one of those things where it's like, if we do this, we're going to lose. But if we do this, we're also going to lose. Maybe don't let Fnatic have heroes they can backdoor with. Maybe that's the lesson here. Why is Hanzo plus TAS becoming a thing with double support? Wouldn't Vala be better than Hanzo overall? Fuck no. Hanzo does probably 33% more damage than Vala and does mercs infinitely faster. Like, it's not even comparable. And Hanzo is safer because of his attack range. So, safer, higher damage, better merc. Better escape, as long as there's a wall nearby. What's the advantage to Vala? Also, vision. People underestimate vision. The fact that Hanzo has the best vision ability in the game, bar none. Like, Hanzo literally has the best vision ability in the whole game. Vision means no flanks. Vision means that there's no face checks. Like, it's crazy. Absolutely insane. Zealous versus Fnatic, Infernal Shrine. So Fnatic get outplayed, or was it kind of a throw from Bad Bunny on Blaze and he looked like he played really bad, or am I wrong? I don't think Bad Bunny played Blaze very well. Yeah, Hanzo is broken as fuck. This is true. This is true. Caught a stream live, Pogsloth. Welcome. Thank you for the resub, Beluga Senin. 7 months in a row. Welcome back to the guest list. Medivh is better. Medivh is better than Tassadar, because Tassadar is wave clear and Medivh doesn't. Medivh has interesting advantages in certain matchups when protecting a Hanzo. But is Hanzo's ability to enable wombo combos too good? Not really. The arrow, like, you shouldn't clump versus a Hanzo because you never know when the arrow is going to come. So in that sense, it should only ever be like a follow-up stun in an ideal world, or you overchased into like a tight corridor or something. Basically, I think if you get more than like a 2-man Hanzo arrow, the enemy team made a mistake. SS Jeff just subscribed. Thank you for the sub. Medivh is better. Oh, for vision? Better than Tassadar, not better than Hanzo. Because Medivh can't do anything while granting infinite vision, and he can't actually keep up with rotations because of the mount. You can, like, people while mounted will ride out of Medivh's range and then, like, change direction and juke him. Happens a lot in scrims, actually. We've learned a lot of tricks about playing around Medivh lately. When will Blizzard release the patch that removes the Shimada brothers from the game? Never. Simplicity versus 12 Towers of Doom EDC went stage dive. Why not picking Echo Pedal to go with it? I don't agree with this. If you go stage dive, you should always go Echo Pedal. They didn't do it. I assume because they wanted more burst, but it's a bad decision. How much of this tweet is correct? So the tweet is Chaos's tweet about just pointing out that Cho'Gall scales really well in terms of his damage and his HP, which is true. Cho'Gall is 18. And this is a level 16 and 20 power spec, because the 16 and 20 talents are really strong. Cho'Gall is inherently a late game hero. Volskaya is a map where you just can't end early for any reason, because the objective doesn't enable you to push or get advantages in any way, shape, or form. So you have to win the 20 team fights, therefore Cho'Gall is good on Volskaya. It's really simple. This is true. Should Fnatic broke Hanzo TAS instead of taking me through? Yes. So the question is, should Fnatic have kept letting Zealots have Tassadar and Hanzo? Does that mean Varian is good in Foundry? Varian actually has the largest 10 power spike of any hero in the game, but his numbers for scaling are, his base stats are higher, and then his scaling is lower to give him a strong enough early game to get to 10 consistently. But that also means that as the game scales, he actually starts to drop off. If you, Varian's what I like to call a horseshoe hero, where his win rate in really short games is very low, and then his win rate in medium length games gets really high, and then his win rate in really long games, it goes back down. So Varian would probably be okay on Volskaya for most players. His win rate starts to drop off around level 22. But you can go into your own Volskaya games and evaluate, does Varian get to level D? Like, how often do your Volskaya games go to 22 plus? That's just a personal question. I will say that in pro play, Volskaya games get past level 22 very frequently, so we don't consider Varian a good hero on Volskaya in pro meta. One thing I've been wondering, has there been a complete lack of tracerless task combo now? What could be the reason for this? Hanzo's better. Hanzo's better. Is Tracer a decent counter to Hanzo Hypercarry? So it's really specific because you have to ban. You can't let them have Uther or Kerosene because they have Divine Shield and Palm. So if the enemy team doesn't draft a support that has a hard save, Tracer can be good into Hanzo, but Hanzo also just does mercs really fast. Like, Hanzo's not only insane in team fights, he just macros really well. Tracer's macro is fucking terrible. She has no wave clear until 13. She's completely dependent on her team to carry her in the late game. She has to scale. So, why do pros tend to go Perfect Storm over Third Wind? The only pros who consistently go Perfect Storm over Third Wind are all Korean. Most EU and NA players are split 50-50 between Perfect Storm and Third Wind. Perfect Storm is better for burst comps, and Third Wind is better for trading damage and jumping out. But when you're playing Muradin, you're generally looking for picks at the start of a fight or in the laning phase of the game. Perfect Storm is better for that. Tracer can take sappers on Towers of Doom on her own easily. True. Task Tracer is probably still fine in certain drafts. But it's just Tracer fell out of the meta first because in the November patch, the December patch, the early game mattered more than anything, and Tracer's not an early game hero. And then Tracer's bad into a lot of the meta assassins. Like, Tracer isn't necessarily great into Greymane. With the Tassadar, it's okay, but it's still not, like, fantastic. Tracer's not good into Hanzo, unless the Hanzo doesn't have a support that can save him, but can you risk that? So is the NA Hanzo build much better than EU Hanzo build because of mercs? They do different things. This is one of the things that I think needs to be emphasized a lot. People talk about picking heroes in pro play. You're actually picking builds in pro play. If you pick Thrall as a solo laner, back in the day, Thrall had one solo laning build that was really good. He actually had other builds that were decent in 4-man, or even he had a build that was okay at merking. It wasn't great, but it was okay at merking. But you never saw those builds because Thrall was always picked as a solo laner. The EU build is very consistent and does a lot of team fight damage, but it's sustained over time, so it's more of a chess style way of playing the game. The W build Hanzo is very fast at doing mercs, and it's very bursty, assuming someone's standing next to a wall. So it creates a lot of opportunities for fast, highly energetic fights. And then go look at the way Hanzo's being used in EU. He's being used for wave clear and for these long, slow fights. And in NA and Korea, they're doing really fast fights. Those are different things. Same hero. Very different things. We're seeing, occasionally we see like Sonya drafted with Hanzo in meta, because Sonya can do mercs. Hanzo can't do mercs with Q build. But we never see Sonya really drafted with Hanzo in Korea or EU, because Sonya would do mercs, but the Hanzo can already do the mercs, so why do you need Sonya, right? Sonya's the merker, or Hanzo's the merker when he's W build, and he's not the merker when he's not W build. Very different ideas. Tempo versus... What are the pros' consensus on Blaze at the moment? I don't know if pros have a consensus on Blaze. It seems like everyone agrees he's not a tank and he's an offlaner, because we've only seen him played as an offlaner, which I agree with for the most part, and that he's not necessarily very good at it. Even though, but his major benefit is he has a lot of wave clear and a lot of sustain. Zealots versus Fnatic game 5. After 10 minutes, Tyrael started to double soak instead of Arthas. Why? They hit level 13. So, I think actually this is the game yeah, okay. This is the game. So Arthas was solo laning the entire early game, and Zealots' comp is kind of designed to win the Shrine, and they just want to soak outside of that. They just don't care. But past a certain point, they can start to fight off the Shrine and conceivably win, especially with all the forts gone. So things to pay attention to. All the forts are gone. Blaze has no peel outside of oil spill slows, and his stun is a huge windup that is easy to dodge and cancel. Like, he can't really initiate fights against people who are paying attention. It just doesn't work. He has Wave Clear. Wave Clear is his claim to fame. So all the forts are gone, which means that from this point onward, soaking is going to be a matter of pushing up the lanes very, very far. Arthas has no escapes. None whatsoever. Tyrael has escapes. Tyrael also, since this is post 13, has Burning Rage and Reciprocate, which means he has 2 really good wave clear tools now in his kit. So Tyrael can safely soak pushed up lanes where all the forts are dead. Arthas can't. Also, Arthas can help secure kills with a combination of his route into Malf route in the 4-man, whereas Tyrael can't really play. Was Hanzo played after the nerf? I don't understand the question. Hanzo's only ever been buffed as far as HGC play is concerned. He was changed on live recently, but HGC is not on live patch. Is anyone using Tyrael anymore as a main tank? I would argue that Tyrael was the main tank in this game. I don't understand the question. Tyrael's main tank. Tyrael has been played as a main tank more in HGC than he has been played as the off tank so far. So yes, HG3 is, as far as I know, HG3 week 3 will not be played on live patch. I believe it will have new Tyrael. I don't know if it's going to be on the full live patch or not. We haven't gotten the email yet. Blizzard isn't always responsive. Where does this idea that Tyrell's not a tank come from? Because he doesn't have CC. That's where it mostly comes from. It's very hard. It's much harder to play a composition with a tank that doesn't have crowd control. It is, in my opinion, better in many ways. Tyrael has no peel, though. Tyrael has Righteousness, which is a significant shield. Tyrael has movement speed enhancers combined with slows. So people miss this. Slowing someone down enough is peel. If someone's slowed enough, it's peel. The main problem with slow being peel is gap closers. So like you can't slow a Genji and have him peel because he'll just E. He'll just D. It doesn't matter. You can't get him off just by. But if you're thinking about like running away from a Grey main who already used E and doesn't have the level 13 talent to keep the speed up. Again. So Tyrael can slow people and speed people up, and that makes him more effective in peeling by using movement speed. The problem is you have to actually move. Like if you play Tyrael in Hero League and you smite under your teammates' feet and they run away and you slow the person who's diving them with your Q and you shield them, they should be able to, they would, if they just walked away, they would be totally safe. Tyrael plus Lucio is hilarious, yes. But if you don't just walk away, Tyrael has zero peel. So Tyrael in uncoordinated environments feels awful. So Tyrael's peel is actually quite good, but you have to actually play around the Tyrael. Also, Sanctification is arguably one of the best peel mechanics in like it's area deniability to everything. But the reason that Tyrael ends up splitting from this point onward is he can soak safely. Arthas can't. Arthas can help secure kills from overextensions by Fnatic, and those are likely to happen because we have Oracle and we have vision control from the fact that our lanes are pushed in more. Which means Fnatic doesn't have vision from their minions going out on the map. And so they swapped. It's a really good call. It's a really smart call by Zealots to have Tyrael and Arthas swap there. Mene quitted before game exploded. Do you think he was tilted? I don't really think so. Lots of players will quit when the game's over. Tempo versus Team Freedom Game 5. Why the Tassadar pick? A lot of Tassadar questions. Tempo versus Team Freedom Game 5. So Tassadar is a level 20 win condition unto himself because of Infinite Archon. He has Wave Clear, and Wave Clear is never bad on Tomb. Wave Clear is never bad on Tomb. They also, I mean, they're gonna have cleanse, but TAS is just and Vision is never bad on Tomb either. Like Vision is really good on Tomb to deny turn-ins. If you Oracle from mid lane, you can see both turn-ins, which means you have a very safe. It's what, 30 seconds now. It's a long cooldown, but you can like have a very easy tool to be like, no, you're not turning in. I can see you. Storm is a good interrupt on turn-ins. TAS just has a shitload of utility. And he actually does reasonable damage in team fights with Archon. So you could probably draft TAS in almost any comp, to be honest. The way he's currently tuned. But TAS is always also really good with any fragile hero. So Genji's relatively fragile. You throw Tashiel on, he's a lot less fragile all of a sudden. He can like play more aggressively. Throw a Tashiel on him and then he ease onto a Chromie, Genji can stay in there for an extra like 2 or 3 more seconds. That can be the difference between getting a kill and not getting a kill, and getting the E reset and not getting the E reset. Or getting value out of the Dragon Blade and not getting value out of the Dragon Blade. On any map where wave clear is really important, and Tomb is the most wave clear dependent map, maybe you can argue Shrines is tied with it. Like, TAS is never going to be a bad pick. Or until he gets stun locked and deleted because he was first pick like 90% of the time. I mean, you should never be able to stun lock a TAS is the thing. Because he should never be so far forward that he can get... The initiation stun can get on him. Because Vision. Like, that should never happen because Vision. The tank should be controlling Vision. TAS should be controlling Vision. It just should not happen. Also, anytime you have a wave clear advantage, you also have a Vision advantage because your lanes are more pushed in. So your minions are more consistently getting Vision. And the enemy team has to go catch that soak or they fall behind. So you see them clearing the wave. You know where they are. Wave clear, in many ways, is the ultimate Vision mechanic. Method versus Fnatic game 1. Why double support and why Monk with heal on 1? Is it bad if I say it must have been a misclick? I don't think. The healing was technically buffed. But I don't like heal Monk. I really don't. I just don't. As for why double support is good with Hanzo because Hanzo is a hyper carry. Hanzo's arguably the only hyper carry left in the game. He's the only person who does that level of damage. They have enough wave clear, which is usually the issue with double support. But I don't know, maybe... I mean, the answer is always going to be they had success with it in scrims. They tried it in scrims and it worked. I don't think it's better because I feel like when you draft double support, you're lacking a little bit of damage. And if you draft 2 healers, like, you have enough healing. You're good. I also am not a fan of their draft because I don't feel like it wins the Shrine hard enough. And when you have double support, you need to make sure you're winning the objective, which is why it's so good on BoE still, and not necessarily good on other maps. And I don't think they won the objective, right? In the late game, they like started losing the Punishers. You would think they'd be able to win it with the Alexstrasza, but I didn't like it. Why the same draft even though Diablo got banned? And again, the answer is they must have had luck with it in scrims. So Diablo gets banned, and they just do the same draft with Muradin. Mostly Fnatic got a pick before Shrines. Well, Fnatic understood Method's win condition. Like, Fnatic went deep looking for picks right before Shrines started because they knew they would have a hard time on Shrines itself, which makes sense. So they got a lead from getting the pick. They're in good shape. Understanding the enemy team's win condition is a big part of decision-making at the pro level. Bakery actually said once, if we understand our win condition and the enemy team's win condition, we cannot lose. Which just means that they were having overextension problems. And overextending because you're behind in wave clear can be an issue. But this is obviously a comp they practiced a lot. They drafted for it specifically twice. What if your opponent understands both wins conditions? Well, then you're just fucked. I don't know what happens in that game. It's never happened before in my experience. But literally the idea is win every shrine, Punishers will eventually win the game. Other than that, just don't die and keep your waves clear. And they have a lot of tools to win the shrine. And they have a lot of tools to keep Hanzo alive. Old Dig misunderstood Fnatic a lot then. They did. They did. Alex plus Diablo seems busted with the Alex W build. He is. Alex plus Diablo is with the globe spawning every 15 seconds is so hard to deal with. Because like you can expect the minion wave, right? So you put your W down as the globe is like wearing off from the minion wave, and then he gets another globe, and then the wave shows up, and then you get another globe. It's like permanent globeville for Diablo. With Devil's Due, it's actually just very difficult to deal with. That was all the post-show questions. We've actually been going for an hour and 45 minutes. I started the stream 10 minutes early, so we've actually been going for like an hour and 40? No, an hour and 40 minutes at least. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. There was a lot of questions this week. So that's the end of the HGC post show number 2, 2018. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the resubs and the new subs as well, actually. Thank you for the bits. And I will see you next week with more HGC post-show action. That's the cut for YouTube. And so we'll go over the